Welcome to the Kernel of Truth. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds, your host, and today we have a very special guest, as we always do, but we have Robert Bowes. But I want to introduce him to you guys because I think that his accomplishments need to be talked about. So here we go. Today, we are honored to have a distinguished guest who's made a significant impact in the realm of finance and policy. Please welcome our friend, Mr. Robert Bowes. With an illustrious career spanning several decades, Robert has held pivotal positions in some of the most prestigious institutions in the U.S., from advising the U.S. Housing and Urban Development on housing finance and homelessness policy matters, to working with the Executive Office of the President on key issues like housing, immigration, tax, and trade. His expertise in counterparty risk has led to the recovery of billions for taxpayers during his tenure at Fannie Mae. And not to mention his role as Treasurer and National Finance Director for major political campaigns and his time as the Vice President at the renowned Chase Manhattan Bank. With a rich background in finance, policy, and governance, Robert Bowes brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our discussion today. That's why we have him on the show. And on top of all that, Robert is working on election insecurity. And as you guys know, that's near and dear to this program. He is a leader in that field. And it is a pleasure, Robert, to have you on our program with us today.
Colonel, great to be with you. Thank you for that great warm introduction. I don't deserve it, but we've been at it for a few decades, and happy to be with you today.
Well, you've earned it, and we love having people like you on the program because really and truly, the people who are listening to the show need to know the things that you have to say, and they only get what maybe Fox or one of the news programs. They get little snippets, and we're going to go into some good discussion here about election integrity, what's going on in Georgia, and you're the guy. I want people to understand. There are a wealth of people who are in the background, who are working hard to try to save this country, who are busting their tail. And these people you don't hear about. They are the heroes trying to protect our country, and they really don't get any credit. You're one of those heroes, and so you're going to get credit today. And I want to point you out, and that's why I asked you to come on the program, because people don't know your name. They don't know you're one of the few who are out there really fighting. So I want to talk about my first question. What are you working on currently? I kind of know, but I want our audience to know when it comes to election security here in America.
Well, yeah, thank you. No, there are so many. This is a sort of sector space. Fixing our elections, securing our elections, protecting our votes. That's an area that nobody really thought they would need to be in 3 years ago. But after we saw what happened in 2020, some folks have jumped in, and now more. We had lots of mama bear groups, state organizations. And in that 2 or 3 years now, we've identified and all kinds of people all over the country focusing on different aspects of election fraud. And I've been involved in sort of gluing them together to share best practices, to connect people, and specifically to do that in Wisconsin, Arizona, and now Georgia big time. So I've been working on identifying election fraud that was not found. You could not find it right away in November of 2020 or December of 2020, but with the luxury of time and research and researchers and public record requests and just tenacity, we've been able to find lots of evidence of election fraud in all kinds of it. There was end-to-end election fraud in 2020 and in 2022. And now we're using that evidence to support two civil cases in Georgia that are suing Fulton County or the state of Georgia on election fraud. In those two cases, one is voter GA Garland Favorito versus Fulton, and the other is Caroline Jeffords versus Fulton County. Those two are still going on. They're about to go to trial. And so the folks I've been working with, and we've identified lots of different aspects of election fraud evidence to prove that election was stolen, and mostly to make sure those things don't happen again in 2024. We want to protect people's right to vote and their votes in 2024.
Well, that's something that, we have been fighting for here in Arkansas, as you well know, and we get a lot of resistance. But one of the big questions we always get from everybody who are the people who are actually part of the system, who want to keep machines, they want to keep the current status quo, they say, what evidence have you seen? Tell me the evidence. Show us where show us something. And it is very difficult. Can you give any insight as to the evidence that y'all found there in Georgia and other places?
Yes, definitely. So in the Arizona case and in Georgia, for Georgia 2020
right,
and Arizona 2022, there was no signature verification of the absentee mail-in ballots. That's an old school type of cheating. If you mail in, or you have somebody that fakes a name or fakes a voter and mails in a ballot that they shouldn't be mailing in,
right.
They're supposed to, one of the checks and balances is to do a signature review of the return envelope, and you compare that to the voter registration files. Well, very little of that was done in Maricopa in 2022 in Arizona, and almost none of it was done in Fulton County in 2020. That's one element. Then we've had, plenty of experts that are working on that. And that has not, that all the cases that have been brought so far, in Arizona, it's proceeding actually, with the Kerry Lake case. And we have the 2 civil cases in Georgia where signature verification issues or lack thereof is going to be brought out in court. And we're also going to bring it out we'll talk further about this, but about the criminal cases in Georgia where evidence will come out as well. So that's one type. Signature, they didn't do signature match. So you basically letting people in, or people that weren't real voters, they were let in to vote. That's one. We found like the physical access to the tabulators, to the poll books, the electronic poll books, and to the election management systems were all had issues. And we have whistleblowers on it too, one from Milwaukee and one from Atlanta. In each of their cases, they were using, or alleged that people were using USB memory cards to get rid of the original votes and insert fake votes.
Uh-huh.
So the tabulators, when you have it at the precincts, all the precincts, eventually you have to like aggregate all those,
right,
and insert them into an election management system, which wraps them all together and reports them. But you do that often. It's all by a memory card that is taken out of one machine, out tabulator, and put into the election management system that aggregates it. But what happens if there's an election worker like in Milwaukee or in Atlanta who swaps them out and takes the real one and tosses it and inserts a fake one with thousands and thousands of votes that were illegitimate? We have whistleblower, Ruby Freeman herself in Georgia said the USBs are going to blow your mind. And she wanted to go live. She wanted an attorney. She did that on police body cam. The next day, the FBI at that time took her from her house because they were so scared about what she was going to say. And they basically, that was tampering with a witness. Our view is that was tampering with Ruby Freeman. She spilled the beans on one day, and then the next day the FBI took her from her house for 2 months.
Okay, so now you and I both know who Ruby is, but
yes,
there are a lot of people who probably don't know her name. Can you kind of tell people why she's important and how she plays into the Fulton County, the Atlanta problems?
Yeah, so Ruby she and her daughter was her boss. Shay Moss was an employee of Fulton County Elections. And Ruby Freeman was a contractor working for her daughter. And they were the 2 women who were left over and remained at State Farm Arena in that whole suitcases under the table issue.
When they had the big water leak, the big water main broke, right? That's when they had to clear everybody out.
That was fake.
Right.
There was no,
right.
There was no water main leak. Exactly.
Right. I think it was an overflowed toilet. I think it's what it was. And they called it a big water main break. It's crazy. But anyway, go ahead.
It was a ruse to clear people out, and then people left. So without observation, which is also not legal. They went ahead and took ballots from containers and scanned them into the system to count them. And Ruby Freeman herself she was on body cam admitting that she was told by her managers, somebody there, like, could have been Shea or Ralph Jones. They were told to, that the count was low. It was really low. And we need to get more ballots. And then she's saying, because she and her daughter managed all the mail-in absentee ballots. And they told her, well, there's none more to do. We've done them all. So how can we get more? And then they looked around and there's nobody there at State Farm Arena anymore. And she says, boom, under the table, cut the zip ties. And we opened them and we scanned them. And that's how we got the numbers up, because she was told that the numbers were really low. And we have other evidence from internal Fulton County Board of Elections meeting where they were really concerned how low the in-person turnout was. Nobody was interested in voting for Joe Biden, and the results showed it. And they were like, they knew they had a bunch of mail-in votes, and they had almost done processing all those. Even Brad Raffensperger said we only have 90,000 to go, and then so lo and behold, the 90,000 were taken care of. But then another 200,000+ show up in the few days after the election. So Brad Raffensperger has some explaining to do. He hasn't had a chance in court yet to do that. He's going to get that chance in the civil cases and the criminal cases in Georgia. So,
oh, wow.
But Ruby Freeman's her admissions about scanning these ballots that had been sealed. And the normal procedure is you only seal them up after they've been done and counted, but they cut the zip ties on them and scanned them. Now, it could have been, we think they were probably legitimate paper stock, but they needed ballot images to match up with something that Ruby Freeman, she says, the USBs are going to blow your mind. So they could have been using USBs to inject more fake votes. And when you do that, you need to match them up with a ballot image. So she's going to get her chance in court to talk about this as well. Yep. But we already have her on tape and on police body cam talking about this. So that's the type of evidence we have.
Well, we got about 90 seconds before the break. I want to ask you, when do you expect that to come to trial? When do you think that will be known to the American people?
So with the plea agreements with the two, Ken Chesbrough and Sidney Powell, that pled to very minor charges and paid, small dollar fines. They're not going to go to trial. That was supposed to happen right now. They were doing jury selection as of last Friday. Now that's not going to happen. So there's just going to be one big trial starting in March. But a lot of the witnesses, subpoenas are going to be identified, and evidence is being shared back and forth between the prosecution and the defense. And so some of that news will come out between now and March, but the trial will be March of next year.
March of next year, man, I cannot wait. I really want to see what that has to offer. When we come back, I want to talk about, we constantly hear that as Trump has lost every case, as far as challenging election integrity, and that, the consensus is that the 2020 election was the most secure in our history. I want you to talk about that. And I want people to hear what you have to say, because I think you have insights that very few people really have. So we'll be right back. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds with the Kernel of Truth. We'll be back with our special guest, Robert Bowes. Thanks so much. Welcome back to the Kernel of Truth. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds, and we're here with our special guest, Mr. Robert Bowes, extraordinaire. He's got so much information about election integrity, security, the lawsuits that are going on, the background information that everybody wants to know. And I will tell you, and just before the break, I told you that we were going to talk about the 2020 election. I usually don't talk about it that much on this program because we look forward, but I think it's important for people to understand that everybody we talk to says, well, hold on a second. It's the most safe, it's the most secure election in history. We've heard that from everybody. And not one court case has ever turned up any evidence. I'm sure you've heard the same thing. What do you tell people when they tell you that?
Wow. I would refer them to look at what's going on in Bridgeport, Connecticut, in New Jersey, in Houston. Harris County, Texas has 20 active election fraud cases going right now that a judge is about to rule on. Bridgeport, Connecticut was a Detroit mayoral candidate who caught his opponent's staff stuff in a Dropbox. So there are lots of cases going on. The ones that you hear about, like CNN and MSNBC, will say, 65 cases or whatever. Nearly all of those were tossed out because of procedural motions and rulings like lack of standing, that the party didn't have a cause of action, or didn't affect them, or they should have brought the case earlier, which is the doctrine of latches, which was kind of bogus as well.
Right.
You know, that you should have known this fraud was going to happen. You should have stopped it. But anyway, so nearly all were on standing or latches or just these bizarre legal theories, and no evidence was heard. There was maybe one case, like in Pennsylvania, on whether the legislature, what they did in terms of allowing absentee ballots, was properly constitutional. That did go, but it was a bad ruling for the good guys.
Was that the same case where there was a this was in Pennsylvania, where the judge, I think she was a circuit court judge, and she wanted to hear the evidence, and the Supreme Court pulled it out of her court, and then they quickly ruled on it and overturned. I think it was the counting ballots after the election. I can't remember, but I remember there was one judge who wanted to proceed, and the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania pulled it out of her court. And so I don't know the exact details of that, but I will just tell you, everywhere we go, it's lack of standing, and I want to see something, hopefully, in the future that where people can show that, in fact, there is evidence, a lot of it, actually.
Right. So in Georgia, in the civil cases that are happening, and that might happen before March, the trial may get going, and discovery and deposition is going to happen before then. They were rewarded standing by the Georgia Supreme Court. Garland Favorito and Caroline Jefferson.
Yes, that's Georgia voter or JAVA voter. Is that right?
Voter GA.
Yeah.
voterga.org. You can help them. Exactly. And Caroline Jeffords, whom I'm helping as well right now. We are going to bring all the evidence that we've been developing for 2 years and uncovering is going to go in her case on the civil side. But it's also going to be used in defense on the Georgia indictments.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of folks have heard about the 2,000 mules, and when the illegal ballot traffickers that were, cooking up fake ballots and dropping them in drop boxes. If you change the threshold that Catherine Engelbrecht had used for that, if you bring it down from 10 stuffed ballots and multiple appearances, if you dial that down to like 4 ballots, then you actually have 24,000 mules in 6 cities. None of those illegal ballot traffickers, nor the entities that have been funding them, the progressive groups and community organizations that were organizing these illegal ballot traffickers, none of them have come to light until we hope soon in Georgia, where they will be de-anonymized because of criminal cases in Georgia. So we have an opportunity there to do that and discover and subpoena them and call them as witnesses. So we're excited about that. We have other evidence, and like Fulton County, where, again, a Democrat race, there was a woman who got third place and in the 2022 primary. And even her own precinct, she had 0 votes, but she knows she and her husband voted. So there had to be 2 votes. And she complained about it as a Democrat. She complained about these Dominion machines in that county. And they did a little checking, and they found out that, we didn't count any of your votes. And actually you won the race. So there was like 3,000 extra votes that kind of showed up for a mayor or for a supervisor race. So she went from 3rd to 1st after they actually figured out that the machines were malfunctioning and not counting her votes at all. So, and we also have another Democrat case, and this impacts the Georgia criminal cases now. Uh-huh. So some folks have heard about the Georgia indictments. There were 3 types of actions that were proposed that the prosecution was going after. Pressuring election workers, computer breach, and what they call fake electors. Well, the fake electors were all legitimate. They needed to have a contingent alternative legitimate slate. And these states around the country did that. There was no computer breach. And then the other one was the pressuring election workers. Well, we have the election worker herself in Georgia saying she was identifying and blew the whistle on the fraud. Nobody pressured her. The three people they indicted did not pressure her. She did it voluntarily. But back on the computer breach.
Yeah.
This is the Sidney Powell one where they said, oh, you broke into the computers and you took election data. Well, the prosecution just dropped those charges. So she pled to something like, I think it was interfering with the operation of an election. Well, that election was already done, so there was no operation to interfere with. And the election workers who are also indicted, they're going to testify that nobody interfered with the operation of an election. What they were trying to do was actually look at why the machines were malfunctioning. These Dominion machines were reporting vote totals that were significantly lower than the number of people that came into the polls. So you had, say, 1,000 people come into the polls, the machines are only counting 400 votes. It's like, okay, how can you have 1,000 people check in and the machines only count 400? So the election workers were like, something's wrong here. We better look at it.
Uh-huh.
They ended up certifying the 2020 elections, but they said afterwards, well, let's go back and look at it. So they did that, and the important point here is that and you've had on your show, you have great guests, by the way.
Thank you.
Professor Apple and Alex Halderman, Princeton and Michigan professors, they were involved in a case called Curling v. Raffensperger. And in that case, the judge, the liberal judge, sister of Nina Totenberg from NPR, the judge Amy Totenberg ordered them to go in and inspect. She got a court order and go in to inspect the machines in Coffee County, Georgia. So here you have the Biden prosecution saying, oh, somebody breached the computers. Well, guess what? It was a Democrat judge that ordered the inspection of these malfunctioning computers. So, and the prosecution, conveniently forgets that part of it.
Right.
These machines are messing up.
And I want to talk about that too a little bit. We're going to a few seconds here in this segment, and then we're going to come back. But very interesting, and we're going to see Dr. Appel told us exactly what is going on. So did Dr. Stark. We all know that these machines have vulnerabilities, big vulnerabilities. Professor Halderman, who did the deep dive into the Dominion machine there in Georgia, and his report that came out in June. I think that people need to read these things and educate themselves, because really and truly we have a real problem with these machines, and that's why we're trying to get rid of them in Arkansas. I think that's just one of the ways. The drop boxes, the machines, there are a multitude of ways that these elections can be manipulated. And we're finding more and more each day how they do it. And again, I think it's death by 1,000 cuts, right? They have 1,000 different ways to manipulate a vote. And we're constantly trying to figure out how to fix it and make it more secure. And I think paper ballots is the way. So when we come back from this break, I want to talk a little bit about paper ballots and your work with President Trump and my conversations with him about trying to get that in our country, paper ballots, the gold standard. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds. We'll be back with our special guest, Mr. Robert Bowes, here on the Kernel of Truth. Be right back. Welcome back to the Kernel of Truth. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds. We're back with our special guest, Mr. Robert Bowes. And we would love having him on the show. Robert, we were talking about what is election security and paper ballots and why that's the best, why that's a gold standard. Just about every expert that I've spoken with on the election integrity front, all these professors, PhDs, a lot smarter than I'll ever be, have told us time and time again that paper ballots are the gold standard. Here in Arkansas, as you know, we started the Arkansas Voter Integrity Initiative in order to educate people. It's a 501c4 to educate people on why these machines are vulnerable and why these machines cannot be trusted and why it's difficult to have evidence that would hold up in a court of law. I have mathematical evidence, but we think that it's important for people to understand paper ballots are the best. President Trump, I even had a meeting with him in February, and he was all for paper ballots, 100%, even allowed me to put his picture with me on all these billboards saying paper ballots. That's a thumbs up to paper ballots, because we believe that's what we need to do. Give us your insight. What do you think?
Whoa. So in the course of investigating election fraud for the past 2.5 years, these are real concerns. The election fraud we've seen is something everyone should be concerned about, that your votes are being suppressed by cheating or canceled out by cheating. We no longer want to have vote nullification by, the types of fraud we've seen where it's some fake name on a voter roll that then requests an absentee ballot, that somebody sends that in to ghost vote a fake name. So that I call that cheat by mail. We have to stop the cheat by mail. And then we also have identified, and we have these experts that you've had on your show say that the tabulators, the electronic poll books, and the election management systems are all easily hackable. They all can be wired or wirelessly connected to the internet. And and we're not sure who has the access to that because they can cover their tracks. We do have the system logs to show the errors and what has happened in certain states where we're doing litigation and discovery, like Arizona and Georgia. And we see incursions that should not have happened. That's going to come out. So we definitely need paper ballots hand counted at the precinct level and no cheat by mail. So we have to clean up the voter rolls. We have to use hand marked paper ballots, not through some QR code or barcode that you don't know what it means, because we found that had problems in Maricopa in Arizona in 2022, where there were errors that were caused by the ballot marking device in there. We've seen it happen in Georgia with the QR code being misread and errors being produced, 20 to 30% error rate because of the QR codes. So all these things we found, it's just appalling and of course, then there is the access into the machines where you can easily, within 5 minutes, change the results. And we have experts that have proved that. Clay Parikh, Mark Cook, excuse me, have shown that these machines' results can be easily hacked to change the output. You wouldn't want to think this is happening, but it is happening. And we want to prevent it from happening again in 2024. So President Trump is absolutely right about these election integrity measures. And Arkansas Voter Integrity Group is great. Thank you for what you're doing, Colonel.
Well, thank you.
On getting this advanced to protect the voters, all voters. This is we want real voters to be protected. We don't want fake votes. We don't want people stuffing a USB in the back of a machine. We don't want extra ballots scanned in. We want just fair and secure elections.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. Like I say, if anybody just listens to some of the experts, why are we spending millions and millions of dollars to have a machine simply count our vote? I mean, really, that's what, and that's what's amazing. They've been able to pull this ruse over everybody. And I call it the black hat. They take the black hat and say, see, there's nothing here to see. And, they bring somebody up from the audience, which was Secretary of State, and he says, I verified there's nothing in the hat. Everything is good. There's no problem here. But then when they pull a rabbit out of the hat, everybody's amazed. It's magic. No, they know the trick. And we don't. And, they know what's behind the curtain. They know what's underneath the cape. We can't prove that. And so what I tell people all the time is that this is a trick. They have the ability to fake you out, and you simply don't know. And that is the problem that we have. Here in Arkansas, we don't have the mail-out ballots, thank goodness. We do have absentees, but very, very few absentee ballots. So we know that the majority of malfeasance, if it happens, is during the voting process, inside the machine. So that's what, the touchscreen, that is the key, because voter intent is absolutely critical, as you well know. And that's why we know that the paper ballot captures voter intent by 99%. We know that. So now we have a document, as long as you have good chain of custody on it, and as long as you have the process in place to make sure that there's no way that they can insert a fake ballot, then when you count those, you can be assured that the count is correct. But here's my question. Robert. Why are so many Republicans fighting us on this? Because that's all. Here in Arkansas, we're a 70-30 state. We know, because of a poll that we just did, that 71% of Republican voters, guess what, won't the paper ballots. They want to get rid of the machines. But just about everybody in the state legislature, all the Republicans, they all want the machines, and they're fighting tooth and nail. And they fought every effort, everything that we've been trying to do, from the legislative to the judicial to our county by county effort to try to stop us. Any ideas why that would be?
Two big ideas come to mind. Those legislators are scared. They're scared of media referring to them as election skeptics, election deniers. They're avoiding a hot button issue. The more nefarious is that they're probably taking money from the machine companies. They're probably taking donations indirectly or directly from the machine companies. And one of the things is a kind of a lie. I mean, they'll say, we've counted ballots at precincts for hundreds, 200 years. There's no reason why we can't go back to that. And when you try to do these centralization, that's when the mistakes happen. That's when the fraud happens, where you lose track of stuff, maybe purposely. Maybe somebody throws in some extra ballots, throws in some memory cards. We have to stop it. This needs to be precinct-based, hand counting. It's easy to do. Doesn't cost. It actually saves money. So I'm shocked, actually, that all legislators wouldn't adopt this easy fix, so that we prevent voter suppression. We do not want anybody's votes being canceled out by a fake vote or some malicious code. So there's two types of, by the way, there's two types of cheating that we've seen inside the machines. Some you can track and some you can track. We're getting the system logs that show every electronic movement of the ballot through the tabulator, exactly what happens, and when we could see the errors assigned to that. So we're going to be bringing that out in the Georgia cases. We have the system log files, and isn't it interesting that the folks who are backing the machine companies, they don't want us to see the system log files. They don't want us to do paper hand counts. They are blocking those transparent efforts. We want transparency. We want fairness, openness, and the opposition, including some of the Republican legislators, they might be getting bribed, basically, or donations to keep the elections unsafe.
I couldn't agree with you more. We're gonna take a break. We're gonna come back in our next segment. I want to talk about election finance and what you've discovered in Arkansas, and why the status quo won't get challenged, and the need for conservatives on the ballot, to get more conservatives on the ballot across the nation. We'll be right back in a few minutes. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds with the Kernel of Truth, with our special guest, Mr. Robert Bowes. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Kernel of Truth. I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds, and we're here with our special guest, Mr. Robert Bowes. Again, thank you for being on the program. And one of the things I want to talk to you about, because you have really good insight about what's going on in the financial sector, and especially in Washington, D.C. We've got 4 congressmen in our state here in Arkansas. One of them is on the Financial Services Committee. But none of them are in the Freedom Caucus, not one of them. Yet we're supposed to be one of the most conservative states in America, and yet none of them are in, that has always boggled my mind. But I think you have some unique insight on the financial aspect, and most people here in Arkansas really don't know how their congressmen vote or what they're doing in Washington, D.C. They only know what they've been told here, all doing a great job trying to protect the Arkansas taxpayer. Can you give us a little insight?
Absolutely. So, I can think of one congressman, because I know banking really well. I've been doing it for 30 plus years, corporate banking, institutional banking, housing finance with Fannie Mae. French Hill has been a disaster for Arkansas and the country. He rubber stamps every big spending bill that goes through there. Never raises an eyebrow to these massive $1 trillion plus bailouts.
Well, I gotta. Let me ask you one thing. I hate to keep your thought, because when he ran in 2014, he said that the biggest threat facing America is our financial debt, and we were $16 trillion in debt at that time. And he also said the biggest thing is that congressmen who stay too long, who've been there too long. So you're telling me that he's saying that back in 2014, but he is part of this problem?
He's exactly part of the problem. French Hill is a disaster for Arkansas. Where was he on the speaker vote? And this is on McCarthy vote in January. Why wasn't he voting along with the Patriot 20? That was all based on these excessive spendings and these packaged up bills. They throw all these bills together where nobody can really object to any of the particular line items on it. So the Patriot 20, they succeeded in busting that apart. And they wanted to get to all the hidden pork that's embedded in there. French Hill wanted the opposite. He wanted to hide it from everybody, just like pass through trillions of dollars. Where was he? Why didn't he vote to have single issue spending bills? Why didn't he have to go back to what they call regular order, where they do one agency at a time instead of like packaging all of these agencies together in just one big multi-trillion dollar thing? So he's
big omnibus bill. They put it all in together, and if you vote against it, then you hate the military, or you hate whatever. You hate. Yeah, I got it.
You know who did that right? Actually, the governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton, did that right in '96, and we had actually a balanced, very darn close to a balanced budget. I'm no Clinton fan, but at least they were using the old school budget process.
Right.
French Hill has presided over this. Just hide everything. Just suck up to the K Street lobbyists and special interests. He gets half of his donations from these financial PACs. The big banks, the big insurance companies, they give him half his money. So he's happy. He's basically played the people of Arkansas. He's never looked back. It's like, as long as I get my big donations in DC from K Street, I don't really have to answer to the people of Arkansas. Well, guess what's happened? French Hill's brought inflation onto the people of Arkansas and people of the rest of the country. All these big spending things have hammered take-home pay. Our disposable income is down because of French Hill, because of the other three in Arkansas. They should have stood up and said no to these massive spending deals. They should, and you name the issue. It goes on beyond economics, but I'm just on the economic side. They did nothing on the bank bailouts. French Hill could have said, why is Signature Bank failing? Why is Silicon Valley Bank failing? They should have had hearings on that and why that thing failed. Instead of just rushing to do a bailout and stick it to all the other depositors, they should have investigated who got the benefits. And there were only 13 depositors at Silicon Valley Bank that had more than $1 billion in deposits. Those 13 entities are the ones that got a bailout. They shouldn't have gotten a bailout. And what they did is, French Hill in particular, sitting as vice chair of the House Financial Services Committee, he should have stopped that bailout. He had the power to stop that right there and tell Janet Yellen, hey, don't stick it to the depositors. And he enabled it. He's a disaster. He's worse than a Democrat, I'm telling you. So we need America First candidates. Conrad, Colonel, I wish you'd get in the race. We need, no, seriously, America First candidates that will be fiscal conservatives, social conservatives. They'll close the border. We have, 100,000 fentanyl deaths because the border's wide open, thanks to, Republicans and Democrats in Congress. They need to stand up and block this right now, today, even with the new speaker, with Mike Johnson. They need to say, we are closing the border. We are protecting Americans. We are stopping the spending. We're going to bring down inflation like they really. So I
couldn't agree with you. First off, thank you for the compliment. And I will tell you, the southern border has been a big thing on my radar since 2009. And they still haven't got it fixed. And it tells you that the political elite do not want that border closed. And I would say, first off, I don't think we ought to be giving any money right now at all until we have a plan for Ukraine. However, for sure, I wouldn't give a dime until the southern border is secure, period. We stop this. We fix that first. Let's do that first. And but they won't use it as leverage, but we should. We should be using it as leverage to ensure that is what we're doing. Right here in Arkansas, everybody wants the status quo. Just keep the way the things are going. That's the problem. That's what problem we have here. And people aren't educated enough right now. They're not opening up to understand what it is that's happening in our country. That's why we got people like you on the program to let people understand what really is going on in Washington, D.C. Not just what the sound bites they hear on a commercial, but what really is happening. And So go ahead. I don't want to take. We got 6 minutes. Keep it up.
So what's happening is these guys go to Congress and then they immediately forget their constituents and they vote for this massive spending. And then they say, well, why is inflation so high? Why is our debt 33 trillion on balance sheet? They are bankrupting our country right now. We can't afford the interest on our debt. Right now with interest rate, it's a massive feeding frenzy with all this government spending. It's driving up inflation. It's driving down our net take-home pay. You got Biden taxes that are hitting us. Mm-hmm. We have our grocery bills are hitting us. So we can't. But Americans hurting. You want to know why people are? The unemployment rate is dropping. It's because people are taking second jobs to pay the costs that have been jacked up by all this excessive spending. So we need to restore that right away. Under President Trump, I worked for him, and when housing finance was doing great, the economy was doing really well. We had real wage growth, partly because we shut down the border. African American, minority, real wage growth was happening big time. Unemployment was the lowest ever. The stock market was doing great. Things were really working out in 2019. Then the China virus was brought on us. But we need to get back to that. But we need members of Congress with President Trump who are going to vote with him to help him do these things. We don't want these backbencher, backstabbers like French Hill, frankly, who voted. They're just in it out for their own self-interest. They are not representing the people of America. President Trump doesn't get paid. He does this for free to represent the American people, to put Americans first. So we need to upgrade the Congress. I'm helping some folks around the country. Love to see Conrad Reynolds be a representative in Washington for the people of Arkansas. I'm helping some other America First candidates in Arizona and Texas, and a couple in Texas. We would like to bring those bring folks like you into Congress. So
well, thank you for that. Again, I think you're right. I think they do need, without question, we need to get rid of the middle of the road type people, especially the people who are rhinos. We need to get rid of those folks because they are the ones who prohibited Trump from being successful in 17 and 18 when he tried to secure the border. He had to go to and get money from the Defense Department. And he was even sued on that, if I'm not mistaken, in order to be able to get the money for the wall to put it up. He wasn't being helped by Congress. Okay. They said, we're going to get rid of Obamacare. They never could pass that. Over and over again, they failed President Trump when he was there. And I would encourage listeners to go look at some of these scores like Heritage Action. Look at some of the scores of some of these, quote, conservatives when Trump was in. Their numbers went way down because they didn't want to pass bills that they knew he was going to sign. They become very conservative when they know there are bills that will never get past the Senate or will never be signed by the Democrat president, Biden. But go back and look at how they performed when President Trump was there, and that will tell you how they're going to perform when he's reelected.
Conrad, I worked on that at the White House with the wall funding. Ran the policy coordinating committee for that, and we had several great ideas. We ended up doing repurposing the Defense Department money to fund the wall. We had 3 or 4 other great ideas: remittance taxes, wire taxes that Obama reduced. We wanted to bring them back up, and then asset seizure funds. All the asset seizure funds from Department of Justice, from Treasury. We wanted to use those funds to put up the wall. There's lots of ways to do this. Members of Congress could easily write these into their appropriation bills. Easily. They were just wimps about it. I think they lack the backbone, and they think they can go to Washington and just forget their constituents, and they immediately sell out to most of them. There's some great ones. We have 20 or 30 in the Congress. We need to get another 40, 50, 60 of them in the Congress that are real supporters of America first, for the people, not for the special interests like French Hill.
I couldn't agree with you more. Again, right now, we really need 150 people in the Freedom Caucus. That's what we need. And I've said this over and over again. We need to get the people educated in America. When I was asked the question what the biggest threat against America was back in 2014, I said the uninformed voter, because they're voting for people who they have no clue how they voted or what they've done, but yet they're voting for them just simply because they know the name. And they haven't done their due diligence. And so one of the things about this program, what we're trying to do is educate people that, hey, you can't keep doing business like that, or this country is going to go, it's going to sink and will go away. I mean, you know what? We're going to fail. We don't want that. Listen, you've been a great guest. I want you to have you back because you got a lot more, I know, to talk about. And, time goes by quickly, but I hope you're willing to come back on. Ladies and gentlemen,
thank you. Yes.
Robert Bowes has been with us. This guy has been around. He knows election integrity, and he is one of the key players, particularly in Atlanta and in Arizona and across the country. And we couldn't thank you more for coming on and sharing your expertise with us. And we will invite you back. Robert Bowes, thank you so much, sir. And
thank you, Conrad. Glad to be with you. And go get him.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And thank our audience. Thank you for listening. And next week, we'll have another great episode on the Kernel of Truth. Thanks so much. Give this video a thumbs up, if you will. Like and subscribe to our channel. Very important for us to spread this message to everybody. And I can't do it without your help. This is the Kernel of Truth. And I'm Colonel Conrad Reynolds. And thank you for joining us.